But right now, we're going to get into some hardcore Q&A.
Nuts
Cat
and bolts.
Hunter. The Cat Hunter's been waiting for this. You guys have been posting questions on the forums and also on Twitter. You can send questions to @CatHunter and @JeffKeighley on Twitter. And joining us is the lead systems designer for World of Warcraft, Greg Sheet. Greg, it's great to have you here. Cat, you just want to get right into it? What are the fans at? Cat has pages and pages of questions here.
Uh-oh. Okay, so all of you obviously know Greg Street as Ghostcrawler, who spends probably more time in the forums than any of the other blue posters. So I went in the forums and I went on Twitter and I pulled out questions. So I'm going to get some of the quick ones out of the way first, all right? I'm also going to turn this down because I'm blowing myself up. Quickly, everyone wants to know where their moose is.
They can't handle the moose.
They can't handle the moose? All right, I promised I would ask. Another couple quick, simple ones is we had several people who wanted to know if Winter Sabers are still going to be obtainable, or should they get that really fast before the Sundering happens?
No, those will still be obtainable. We're not doing anything with them.
Okay. And what about the mounts in AQ that we use in the instance? Now that it's going to be a zone, will we be able to use those mounts in that zone?
You mean AQ or ZG?
Oh, I thought AQ, is AQ still going to be
AQ is still going to be there, and you can still get the bug mounts or whatever.
No problem. That answers that question. Okay. All right. So that's the simple stuff I just wanted to get out of the way.
Now the hard ones.
Here we go.
They're all easy. Well, I just thought first, what is on everyone's mind is what is getting ready to happen with a Sundering. Is it going to be something that we're going to be able to watch happen? Are the servers going to go down, and when they come up, everything is changed? What are we expecting?
Pretty much that, assuming all goes well. It's a big change we're doing here, but the two old continents are just going to go away, and the new ones will just appear almost overnight. Players will be able to experience that, and then shortly after that, Cataclysm itself will go on the shelves, and players can level up their Goblin War again or go up to 85.
Okay. Now, yesterday during the live raid, probably the most geek moment I've had this entire weekend was at the very end whenever we saw Deathwing come out over, and I get chills just talking about it. But Deathwing is huge.
Yeah.
Massive size.
Yes.
I can't even imagine how you are going to have an encounter. Is that going to be the size of Deathwing in the final encounter?
We would really like to deliver on something that epic. We think it's not going to feel, it's going to be anticlimactic if it's just like a guy standing there with a shield and Deathwing doing the standard Dragon Claw thing. So we have some crazy ambitious plans. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to deliver on it, so I don't want to overpromise, but it's definitely on our minds.
Okay, so everyone needs to roll range DPS immediately.
Blizzard hits melee, right?
That's right. Okay, here's a good question. We've always, this is from Razum and Twitter, we had, the class-specific quests that were around level 50 for everybody. Do you have any plans to bring those back in an updated form? Because they get skipped for the most part.
We have added some new class-specific quests. They're all centered around the dungeons, and I'll probably misremember the dungeons, but I think it may be Shadowfang Keep and Blackrock Depths. Where at, I think it's level 20-ish and level 50, everyone gets a class-specific quest to go into those dungeons, kill a boss, and get a blue item tailor-made for their class and spec.
Okay.
So that's kind of our new version of the class quest.
So there won't be anything for later levels, but only at the earlier levels?
We have those two off the top of my head. We could always add more in the future if those work out.
Okay. Let's see here. This is something that's been controversial in the forums. You recently announced that you're going to be locking out 25 and 10-man raids. You have to pick one per week. When you were planning on doing this internally, did you feel like you were going to be killing the 25-man raid? Was that a concern?
No, I mean, honestly, we talked about it. We're like, okay, the bold move here is just to kill 25 and say, let's go with 10. But, we didn't want to do that. A lot of us, personally, I do a lot of 25-player raids. So it was, we're trying to support both groups. The original kind of design for 10 and 25 and Lich King was, you pick what you want to do. But because of the loot structure, what ended up happening is everyone felt like they needed to do both every week. And a good way to burn yourself out, if you have to kill the boss twice a week per character, it gets old really quick. So hopefully players will decide that whatever's better for their group or their personal play style, they'll pick 10 or 25 and go with that.
So that was the main reason that you did it, is not wanting players to burn themselves out?
Yeah. And I know,
them from themselves?
Yes, and I know they hate that. They're like, don't be a nanny state, Blizzard. But when the game asks you to do ridiculous things, we know sometimes players will do ridiculous things.
Right. Is there going to be any plans to do any special achievements or anything that will distinguish 25 accomplishments from 10?
For the most part, they're the same. There are, the 25 raids drop more loot, so that's, I think, going to be more prestigious for the really hardcore guilds can still focus on that. I think a lot of the world and server first, they'll still want to make a distinction between 10 and 25.
Okay. Here's a question I thought was really interesting. Are there any plans for making achievement points any type of currency for pets or anything else inside the game?
We really are trying to keep achievement points pure. We really want that to be a reward for doing achievements and not turn into something else. There are players that love achievements and players that hate achievements, and those that are kind of like dabble in them a little bit. So we don't want to force players to do that. I mean, the mounts are probably as far as we'll ever get, is having a mandatory reason to do them.
Give players crazy things to do, and they will do it.
Yes, we know.
Going back to when the patch just released, when 4.0 came out, we've seen a lot of changes happen in hot fixes ever since the patch came out. I mean, Shadow Priests, for example, were gods for that one moment. It was very fun, like listening to all my friends go in PvP. So my question is, like, what was happening behind the scenes? What is it like whenever the patch first launches and you start watching what's happening and you start seeing the out of balances? What's the process?
Right now there's a whiteboard in my office, and whenever we see a problem, it goes on the whiteboard, and then we're like, okay, how do we fix this? Sometimes it's easy. With the Shadow Priest, we realized pretty quickly that they were just spamming Shadow Word Death because they weren't worried about hurting themselves in the 80 environment. That kind of self-inflicted damage wasn't much of a penalty, and it was really just hurting the healers. So the Priest's like, oh, I don't care. It's the healer's problem. So.
Yeah. How does that data get to you?
How does it get to? Oh, a lot of different things. I mean, the forums, obviously. All the designers have a lot of contacts kind of out there in the game world, and the players will email us with like feedback or that sort of thing. We play the game, we notice stuff ourselves, we collect a lot of data. We can pretty quickly like get numbers from raids and see what players are doing and kind of figure out where things are going wrong. It's not one particular source, a lot of different sources, and we're always looking for like new tools to add, trying to get more sophisticated balance as we go along.
I always picture like this massive mission control computer in front of you, and then it has like red lights blinking whenever too much DPS
yeah,
in one
the situation room.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that.
A little bit.
We should build that. Okay, we had several mages on the forum. They weren't all arcane specs, some were frost specs, but it seems to be a general concern about their mana regeneration right now. They have evocation, they have mana gems, but outside of that, they have to be out of combat. Are there any plans to help their mana regen in any way?
Our general philosophy for DPS classes like the mage is that mana shouldn't be a big problem, and they should generally have enough to do what they need to do, and they should only start having problems if like the encounter is going too long because they're doing something wrong or they're getting their ass kicked in PvP or something like that. The exception is the arcane mage. We're really trying to make the mana part of the game for them. So if they manage mana well, they can do more DPS, and they have to decide how high can they stack arcane blast before they have to do that. So I would say players who are really intolerant of having to watch mana, arcane, not a good spec for them.
No, they should be. So mana is part of the game, and they just have to learn how to play with it.
Frost and fire, it shouldn't have as many mana problems.
Okay.
I'd love to go to a dinner between the two of you. Just hear you guys go out with your World of Warcraft terms. How are we doing on the questions here, Kat?
We're good. Let me ask a couple more. How are we doing on time?
I think we're ready.
We okay?
We love it. The Inquisition of Greg Street right here live on Direct.
That's why I'm here.
Okay, here's one. You changed the way badges work, and you have justice points. That's what we're spending now. And so when I saw that, I thought in my head, oh, that's so much easier. I'm so tired of collecting badges.
Yes.
And then I read, well, there's Valor points in Cataclysm. Is that not just the same problem in a different form?
The big change this time is there will only ever be Justice and Valor.
Okay.
And when a new tier of content comes out, all the old stuff that was Valor now is Justice instead. So it's kind of like we could have done the same thing with Lich King if we had just kept recycling the old names over and over rather than having to have so many stack up. It got really lame at the end when you're like, down converting your Frost to Triumph to Conquest. And yeah, that was a mistake.
That was a pain in the butt.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay, no problem. 31 point trees. What is there were, obviously probably a very small percentage of players, but some players did do, balanced specs.
Yeah.
What was your thinking in forcing that 31 points into a single tree?
It was players who claim to like the hybrid specs. Often what they were doing is like going down and cherry picking the broken talent in this tree and the broken talent in this tree that makes their class broken. That particularly could be a problem in PvP. There were a few legitimate cases of the guy that like, I really like to DPS, but I like to heal a little bit on the side, and we tried to make sure there were still hooks to do that, but they just involved kind of finishing one tree and then dabbling a little bit in another one to get there rather than legitimately going down both trees. Often players kind of consider it a failure if they don't want to get the talents in the bottom of their tree. So that's just kind of the new design. That'll be interesting to see when we bump the level cap again. That'll allow players to go even deeper into the second trees.
Do you think that mastery is going to be necessary in order to get the most out of your class, or will you be able to ignore it?
If we do our job right, mastery will be exactly even with, say, haste and crit. And then players, ideally, they want a little bit of both. it's kind of broken if like, oh, I want all haste and nothing else. But we hope that players don't ignore mastery. I mean, you know, we want it to be an exciting stat.
And you're going to be you gem for mastery as well, right?
Yeah, I could gem for it.
Okay. Are they selling those gems now? Did mastery gems release in the patch?
I'm going to mess up here. I don't think so. I think the only way to get mastery in the patch is to reforge.
Is to reforge.
Yeah, and then at higher level, they're actually mastery gems.
Okay.
They have cool names like Zen and stuff like that, all kind of inner focus stuff.
Very cool. Oh, speaking of skills, one quick question is we've obviously have changed the way that glyphs work. Do you think that you're killing the inscription skill as a moneymaker?
Well, on the one hand, scribes will. We think there'll be a bigger market for some of the glyphs that weren't as popular before. Before, players could pick and choose and ignore the rest of their glyphs. And now I think a lot of them are just going to want to fill out, you know, anytime you give players a like blank to fill it in, they want to fill it in. So that'll help. And it's not healthy for Inscription to make all of their money off of glyphs if we're tying, you know, the success of that trade skill that much to the glyph market. We're trying to give them other things they can do. There's some fun, you know, the fortune cookies we've added for the level 85 content. And some Dark Moon Fair cards, things like that. We want to prop up Inscription a little bit more and not have it so based on glyphs.
Okay. In archaeology, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I always get that word wrong. In archaeology, it sounds to me like endgame outside of being able to collect pets and mounts is going to be raid buffs, correct?
Sorry?
That in archaeology, one of the benefits is you'll be able to get raid beneficial buffs?
There are. So the way it works is it's only right now in the 5-man dungeons. If you're an archaeologist, you can get a special buff that helps you for that dungeon. We haven't applied it to raids yet. If we kind of like the way it works, we might do it for raids in the future. It's kind of cool right now because it's themed to the dungeon. It kind of feels like it fits in the lore rather than just being a you step in and get a buff. But if it's not too much of a hassle, we'll do more with that.
Okay. Let me get one more before we have to let you go. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one. This is from Valiance, and he asked, what is the direction of Sylvanas Windrunner in Cataclysm? She looks like she's becoming more controversial, and is that the aim of Blizzard?
Well, Sylvanas has a couple interesting things happening to her. One is the Horde is the particular orc side of the Horde is kind of having some internal power struggles of their own, which has let her off the leash a little bit. Sylvanas has a big problem, which is she is the queen of people that cannot procreate through normal means. And so in order to try to get more Forsaken for her armies, she has resorted to using the Valkyr from Northrend because they can create more undead for her army. So it's going to be interesting to see where she goes, or taking the Forsaken a little bit of a darker direction they've been before. It's going to be fun.
No, I can't wait. All right. I think the Inquisition is over.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much,
I love
Greg. You made it through the ringer there with Cat Hunter. And now we're going to head on.